Most of us know exactly what we want and what we want to do. We've just gotten really good at talking ourselves out of it. I'm Julie, and welcome to Be Cringe, the podcast that explores what happens when you start living for yourself and stop worrying about the opinions of others. This might be cringe, but we are doing it anyway. Happy to have you here. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Be Cringe, our very first interview. I am so excited to introduce you all to Max Pete and for you to listen to this conversation that Max and I had. Max is a community builder, a writer, a speaker, an amateur DJ, and honestly, he's just one of the most genuine people I've encountered on the internet. If you've spent any time on LinkedIn or Substack, there is a good chance you already know him. And if you don't, you are about to, and I'm so excited you get to know him. What drew me to Max is he is just the same person everywhere. LinkedIn, Substack, a DM, a video call. There is no persona with him. There is no posturing. It's just him. In a world where a lot of us are editing ourselves, depending on who's in the room or which room we are in, that show up differently to work and with our families and friends and online, it's very refreshing and something that really drew me to him early on. So we talked about what it takes to show up in that way, what it takes to sort of push through and be the person you want to be. We talked about career, identity, scarcity mindset versus abundance and trust, and what happens when you do trust. So I really loved this conversation. I feel like it went deep pretty fast in the best way. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to let the conversation speak for itself. And I hope you all enjoy it. Hello, welcome, Max.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be, I think, the first guest or first few.
Yeah, first guest. I was going to say, I'm so happy to have you, and I'm so excited to officially have you as the first guest on the podcast.
Amazing. That's a big honor.
Well, it's an honor that you're here. When I was crafting my list of who I wanted, you were very close to the top, and I think you're going to be a great first one. So
Appreciate that.
I'm so excited to dive in. Max, I think you and I first connected on Substack and maybe very shortly after on LinkedIn. And then it just felt like you were everywhere to the point where I was laying in bed with my husband one day and he was on LinkedIn and something came up and he was like, "You know Max Pete? I know Max Pete." And it sort of became this moment. But I know that there are people here listening that don't know you. So would love to just know how you usually introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Max. I consider myself a community builder, a writer, speaker, which I want to do more speaking gigs, an amateur DJ. So I like DJ and do music curation for fun. It's always been a hobby of mine. And just a human who's just trying to figure it out. Just day by day. I've done multiple careers. I've done so many different things, and I'm just like always just trying to figure out what brings me joy. I would say is yeah.
I had no idea you were an amateur DJ.
Yeah, I mean, just for
I
fun.
missed that. That's so fun.
I mean, yeah, it's just a hobby. I started my career in the music industry and wanted to become a music producer for such a long time. And I just kind of kept music in the background of what I've been doing with everything. So yeah, it's just been a hobby. Like I don't play really any gigs or do stuff like that. It's just like something that it's just creativity and I don't have to monetize it. Even though sometimes I feel the urge to. But yeah, just for stuff for fun.
I love that. In this day and age, I think it's so important to have hobbies that are for us, that don't need to be monetized. It can be really hard when it is something like that, where you probably could really easily book a wedding or a gig here and there. But
Yeah,
love that it's something that you hold for yourself.
exactly.
That's so good. I imagine with, you've done so much already. I mean, in that intro, we've got hobbies, we've got, this multifaceted career, which we'll for sure get into. One thing that has stuck out about you since we've connected, and of course, I'm seeing you, one part of you, and I'm seeing sort of you in these social spaces, but
you really do seem to be the same person no matter where you are. You show up on LinkedIn and Substack the same. There's no voice difference. You show up, when we're texting, when I've had the honor to talk to you over video. And it feels like you are that way at work and in other places in your life. I'd love to just talk about how, if that's a conscious choice or if that's just who you are.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's definitely a choice of how I want to show up and like how I'm and like the type of content things I post and talk about and everything. But also, yeah, it's just like part of just who I am. I always felt like it would be weird to be someone different online and you meet in person, you're like, who is this person? And like I've had that experience with so many different types of people from past careers and everything of like, oh, online or email, they're really cool. And then in person, they're just like completely different or vice versa. Um, and I just felt like it was like really weird to like have to put yourself in a box, uh, and, you know, of like where you are, if you're working or if you're online or whatever. And so I just want to be myself. I feel like, yeah, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea and not everyone's going to necessarily agree with that. But I was like, it's a lot easier for my own like well-being and self to like know like, okay, I'm gonna just do this across every medium, because otherwise, uh yeah, I just feel like it's a lot harder to put on a different persona or posture a different way just because you feel like you need to do that.
Yeah, I think that it's really powerful to be able to do that. I know from my own experience, I know that others feel the same. I really am trying to unify my voice more across platforms, across, who I am in person, not in person. I think for me growing up, it was almost like easier to hide behind a keyboard. Not to say I was a keyboard warrior, but I would have conversations with people on instant messenger that I would never have in person, right? And I'm kind of dismantling that. Do you feel like you've always been this way, that you've always just been Max at school, Max the playground, Max on MySpace?
uh yeah, it's a good question. I think trying to really like reflect on my life right now.
Yeah, not to, go deep.
No, yeah, I think for the most part, yes. I think I'm in a unique position because I've moved around so much as a kid to adult that like I guess I've always had opportunities to start over or like come fresh, into a new situation or like if it's a new school or a new team or new group of friends or like whatever it is. So I think because of that, I've had a lot of practice of how I want to show up and like who resonates with that the most and like how like it makes me feel better if I'm like myself versus like trying to fit into a certain group or dynamic. And I think because I've had that a ton of that experience my whole life, I think it's caused me to be like, okay, like I've done all that shape shiftingness so much that like I'm just gonna be myself because I've kind of figured out this is how I like to be, which is so interesting because this is like the first realization that I think I've had of that. But I think it's true. I think it's like because I've had to adapt so much with like new groups of friends, new schools, new cities, everything in between that. Like I've got to I've gotten the opportunity so many times to be like, I'm gonna be like this type of person. I'm gonna be like that type of person. I'm gonna do this. And I think because I've gotten all that out of my system or in a way that like I've been able to pick parts of like what I like and don't like, that has helped me like shape, I guess, who I am and how I show up.
Yeah. And at some point that, that reinvention, if you will, it breaks down, right? At some point you show up to work on the first day and then 6 months later, it's like, okay, this is who I am. So I imagine it's nice to not have to expose who you are 6 months later and rather just like be who you are.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just like, I don't know, I just feel like when you're showing up online or other places, not as yourself, but like as something that you think others want you to show up as, it's so much harder to maintain that and then also to carry that on and to just have that weight. And so I think that's also been something that's like been on my mind as well. Is like I don't want that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine you know, you call yourself a community builder, right? I know it's what you do for paid work, but it also very much feels integral to who you are in general. And I think that's a very similar thread, right? Of to the point of your career where it's like, no, I build community, so I get paid to do it, but I also have a bunch of connections on LinkedIn or
Yeah.
whatnot. And I'd imagine that feeds into it. And I feel like it's not something you can fake.
No, I think, yeah, I mean, I think you can fake it, but people will definitely like suss it out because there's only a certain threshold that you can kind of like fake that to until it gets to a point where it's like, what are your intentions and motives? Um, and I think that, yeah, I think that if you can just like, it's, now I'm thinking about all this stuff. I think that like, it's definitely a lot scarier to be yourself because and show up as yourself, and not saying that like you have to like bring your whole self to everything because you also don't have to. You can kind of like share bits and pieces of what you want to. It's harder to do that because it's more vulnerable because it's like that's who you are and you don't want to be judged on that, right? But I think in the long run, like people resonate with that a lot more than they do with the persona you're trying to do. And I think that like when I've been online for, I don't know, I think I got my MySpace in 2005, 4,
Mm-hmm.
3, I don't know, like,
3 or
so
4 sounds right
yeah, so
for
like
me.
21 years, like, um,
Ugh.
and I think, yeah, I know it's
When you put it that
absolutely
way.
absolutely disgusting. But I think but I think, all that time has led to uh, a lot of experimentation of like how you show up, what you share, the evolution of it all too. And I think as I'm getting older and like I think when I was young, and I'm still young, but I think when I was a younger that like you always hear from older people that like, oh, like, you start to be more yourself, you start to care less, you start to like really find like who you are. And I always just like thought that was like the dumbest thing. But like now that I'm in that period, I'm like, oh, that's really true. Like it's really
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely find that there's something really, I don't know, settling about my 30s. And it's just, yeah, I've gone through the early 20s, the 20s bits, settled
Yes.
into the rhythm of who I am and how I want to show up in the world. So I very much kind of resonate with that a lot. I love the like distinction of being yourself without bringing your whole self also. I think that's like such an important point to touch on. There's a way to still be true to who you are, but then also have moments or parts of you that are not for everyone. And I think that's like
Hmm.
could be a very empowering balance for a lot of people.
Exactly. And yeah, I think like I think it's important to, be as open as you want to be, share as much as you want to do. But then also like have a reflection of like, why am I sharing this? Why am I talking about this? Do I need to actually do it? Is it just for my ego that I want some sort of validation, or is it more of like actually I'm using this to like be helpful, or heal or whatever that might be. So yeah, I definitely think it's important and something I, struggle with at times too of like, okay, like what's the actual purpose of me doing this? Is it just to like feed the algorithm or post or whatever versus like something that I generally like want to share?
Yeah. How do you reconcile with that? Like, what's that conversation like in your head?
I think I'm trying to slow down more. So I think that when I'm wanting to share or post or whatever, a lot of times it's really worked for me because I just like go off the top of the dome and I can just post and not think about it and like then analyze it, and like that prevents me from actually posting. But I think I'm starting to add like a little bit more friction in there to be like, okay, like, why am I doing this? Is it because it's generally something I want to share? And so I have that conversation in my head, like a little bit of like trying to have that reflection of being like, okay, just take a pause for 10 seconds and be like, what is the purpose? And if I don't have a good answer in my head of like why I'm doing it, then I won't share. And so I think I'm just trying to have that conversation in my head of like adding that little bit of friction because, yeah, I think otherwise it's been a really good thing to have initially because it's prevented me from second guessing myself and just sharing and posting. But also comes with a price too. Everything comes with a price. And I think the price is sometimes I just like then post stuff that I'm like, oh, actually, like, why did I share
Mm.
that? Like, was it my ego talking? Was it this need of anything? Like, what was the actual purpose of it? And so, I think I'm just trying to add a little bit more of that like balance into there.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and curious if you notice, and of course, engagement's not important, but also it's
Yeah.
social media, so it's to some extent it is, right? Do you find a difference in how you're being engaged with and how you're engaging with others since you sort of slow down and are just being more intentional about your showing up?
I am trying to still be present, um, but consume less, and like it's hard because I think I built a career and I built my online presence by being vocal, by being there, by all of, being that supportive person. Um, but I also think like, and I'm really grateful. It's led to so many different opportunities and people I've met and other things that like I really wouldn't have had without that. But I'm thinking like I think with my point earlier is like now I need to find a better balance of the two. Like I still want to do that, but I want to do it less. Um, and so I'm trying to add more friction into how I show up. Like, yes, I'll still show up every day and like checking, but like not on the apps on my phone. Like I have to like go into a browser. I have to, like I have to like create a little bit more of like friction into that. Otherwise I'll just be on there all the time. And so I think that's like a big part of it. And I also think too is like with my posting, I think I used to aim to do 4 to 5 a week of on like LinkedIn and everything else. And I think that I've definitely taken that pressure off of myself a bit, where it's like, okay, I'll share when I have something or something's coming up or like whatever, but like I don't have a content schedule. I don't have to
Mhm.
like, I think when I was doing my all caps Tuesdays and my Sunday thoughts, like I had like my Tuesdays and Sundays and then I would sprinkle stuff in between. But like now I'm like, I don't want that. And I think that's a little bit of reason why like I kind of paused on those things too, is that like it just it made me have a weekly cadence that worked at the time, but like over time I was just like, I don't want a weekly cadence because
Mhm.
I know it's consistent and I know it's advice I tell people all the time who want to do content of like have a weekly cadence, have a day that people know when you're posting all this stuff. But I think for myself, like we don't need more content. There's already enough out there. So we don't need to put our pressure on ourselves for like having to have so much to say all the time.
Yeah.
And that like we can still show up and it doesn't need to be like this like big thing. And so I think the overall theme of this is like adding more friction into my life.
I love that. I love taking the apps off the phone. I find when I'm on, places like LinkedIn and Substack, I just interact very differently when I'm sitting at a computer rather than being a bit mindless on my phone. And the computer
Yes,
stuff can get a little mindless, but it is like very much not the same thing.
exactly.
I love everything you just said. I remember when you stopped All Caps Tuesday, which for those who somehow have not seen it, is a series that Max would do where he would just have on LinkedIn and I think Substack advice or words of wisdom or a thought in all caps every Tuesday. And I remember when you stopped it and you were like, it's not fun anymore. You said something to that effect. It's not like it's feeling like a chore.
Yeah.
And then you did the same with your Sunday newsletter, which
Yes.
you were writing for what, 3 years, you said?
Yeah. 3 years
Yeah,
without a break.
that's a lot.
Yeah. It was a lot. And I
That's,
think yeah. And I think it just, and I wanted to end it sooner, to be honest with you. Um, I just couldn't get over guilt that I had of like, okay, I've been building this thing. It's starting to get some more traction. I feel like I am obliged to keep this up. And then also a lot of my, really it is like my ego of like, people need this. They need this in their lives, and I'm letting people down and all this stuff. When in reality, like, yeah, it's cool to share this stuff, but like, no one needs it. Like, they'll be fine, and I'll be fine. Um, and I think I needed to like wrestle with that a lot because I just had it in my mind of like, I'm doing a service and I need to help people and I need to do this and all this stuff. And I was just like, really, like, no one, no one cares. Like, people are so consumed with their own thing that they don't, yeah, they'll read it and they'll interact with it and engage with it, but like, I'm not getting messages being like, where is this thing, or like my life is ruined now because it's not out. And so I think I just needed to like actually like pause it and let that happen. But having said all this stuff, it's still hard. Like, I still wrestle with it all the time, and I think that's something I want to get across with any advice I share, anything I do online. Like, I wrestle with all this stuff too, and I have good days and bad days. And I think anyone who proclaims to be an expert in this, whatever, like, they are also going to have good days and bad days. And if they're not, then they're just not being real with you. And so I think I need to remind myself of this too when I share, advice or like reflections that I go through or the things that I do that have been helping. Like, yes, it's helpful. I've been doing a lot of like inner work, but like, it's not perfect.
Mm.
There are plenty of days where I'm just like caught in that cycle. And I think that it's easy to look at someone online being like, oh, like they have everything figured out, but like in reality, like,
It is so easy to look at somebody online and say, "Oh, they have everything figured out." I remember, to your point of like nobody cares, right? Of posting schedule and whatnot. I've also sort of had to talk myself out of that, and I've not ever been as consistent as you in that regard. But it's something that I had to really like reconcile with myself early. Was I know that that pressure just doesn't work for me. I know that like telling myself Thursdays is when this goes out like doesn't really work. And I still, it's like I've got the voices in the back of my head of like, "Oh, but a posting schedule is what they say." And I remember, um, well before you stopped Sunday Thoughts, I'm like, "Wow, Max is so impressive that he does this, like, every Sunday, and it's in my inbox before I'm awake, before my toddler is awake." Like, that's so impressive, and I think it's really helpful for people to hear that. Yeah, even the experts or the people that are doing the right thing
yeah,
struggle, and it's really real, and to your point, if people say they don't, they're probably not
yeah,
being real with you, and as we establish, a lot of people aren't real on the internet.
exactly.
So I think it's just a full circle moment of you being you everywhere and everything you do, and I think that's just really, really impressive
Thank you.
and, like,
No, it means a lot.
empowering, yeah.
Yeah. And I just like, I don't know. I think when I go online to look at what others are doing and then, and for connection, but also for like motivation and inspiration and all that stuff too. And like, I get caught in those cycles of like, oh man, like someone's only showing up and it just seems like post after post after post is just like win, announcement, win, win, win. And I'm just like, how do they have all this stuff that they're doing that like I can't seem to get to that point? But then I have to like really like snap out of it and like remember that that's maybe 5 or 10% of like what's actually really happening. Like, no one really talks about the shit, and I think that's where I kind of want to. That's how. That's another motivation of like why I show up and share things is because like I do want to talk about the good and the bad, and like I do want to make a post when I'm not feeling great because it resonates with others, and also too like I just want to show that like people can like have those feelings and it's gonna be good. Versus like feeling like you can only post about the great things. And I want to like break that narrative. I think that's a big reason of why I've always liked LinkedIn. I don't love it now, by the way. And like honestly, if I could like delete it and get rid of it, I would. Um, but I think one of the reasons why I've been posting there consistently from, I don't know, like 2018, um, is because it's always been this like corporate resume-ish platform, and I've always wanted to break that mold of being like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like you can post about whatever, you can share, you can connect, you can tell the journey, you can do what you want. I just hate the concept of like, you have to show up on this platform like this, you have to do this on this platform, you have to like, I hate the black and white thinking of it has to work this way or that way. Um, and so I think that's always been a reason why I've loved that platform, because I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm going to post about whatever I want to post about and like myself, and be honest, and like people will call out whatever, and that's fine. But like at the end of the day, like we live by all these made up rules and we don't question them. We just do it. We're like,
Yep.
we have to be like this on LinkedIn. We have to, you know, we have to make video, like all this sort of stuff that like we live by these rules that like other people make up, and we don't question or the nuance of everything. And so I think that's a big motivator too of like why I show up the way I do.
Yeah, I love that. I've always felt that way about LinkedIn, but I have not been a consistent person until lately because I'm like, oh, it's just too corporate. And I love following people like you. And I feel like there's this little echelon carved out of LinkedIn of people we're both connected to that show up the same way on the platform. And it's really refreshing. I feel like my algorithm is very much filled with that. And the few times I've had things go viral on LinkedIn, I'm sort of reminded of like everyone else that's out there and yeah, how corporate it is. And I'm like, oh, you guys don't get the joke. So I'm all for the jokes and the yeah, like bringing ourselves to LinkedIn and not taking it seriously and maybe challenging others to not take it so seriously.
Exactly. And now
Yeah.
I think it's like part of the reason why I don't love it now. Well, there's a couple things. One, I think that part of the reason why I don't love it now is says that like a lot of people are just copy and pasting whatever chat GPT output they had and like pasting it as their copy, and like because they feel like they need to post, and there's this like, I love that people have found success from posting on LinkedIn and other stuff, but there's just been this huge push of like, my whole life has changed because I've LinkedIn and I've been posting and all these opportunities, and then it makes other people feel bad, and so they have to feel posted, and then it's just created this whole thing of like you need to be visible and post and have this brand and all this sort of stuff to like have anything you want in life now, and that has just been driving me nuts. And I think that's because it's also now been falling onto the other end of like the spectrum of that black and white thinking of like, oh, now everyone needs to be a content creator and post and do other stuff to have any opportunities or to like, and I hate that. Like, I'm like, why do we need to go from one end to the other and not live in this medium place?
Yeah. Yeah, I think content creation is like beautiful if it's what someone wants to do.
Hmm.
But yeah, I kind of feel like a chore. And you have a quote that I love. I want my personal brand to be being offline or
Yeah.
something of that extent. I love that. Like,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. I never got into personal branding because I'm like, I need to be visible to have opportunities. Yes, I think being visible has led to opportunities. I'm not going to deny that. Like, it's led to things that like doors probably wouldn't have been open otherwise. And like, yes, I now feel that urge to continue to show up because things have worked out in the past. And so like, it is a little ironic for me to say this stuff, but I also think that like, I know so many people who have no online presence at all. Like, they might post once a year, they might have never shared anything, and they make way more money than me. They're way higher up than me. They, have a good life, all this sort of stuff. And so it's like, you can still have that. You don't need to. I just feel like the pressure that people are putting on other people to like have this thing to be visible to post. It's like, just because it worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. And just because, and it not everyone needs to do that thing.
Yeah.
And there's multiple ways to do that, right? Like, I feel like even if you're starting your own business and freelancing, like we go to the internet first to post and try to source leads and do all this sort of stuff. But like we forget that like we can do all that in our local community. There's businesses out in the down the block in the city outside of the internet that you can like be successful and like find clients and do all this sort of things that like you don't need to have this online brand about you. And yeah, that's a big point. I'm just trying to drive home for folks that like it can work and it does work for some, but it's not the only way. Like we're not on a one-way road that like you have to do this sort of stuff. And like most of the people that are selling you the personal branding message are selling you something because they are selling something. Like they have a course, they have something that they are selling that's attached to that message. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's always a big thing.
I think that's huge. Yeah, bring back the coffee shop flyer.
Yeah.
Make a
Like,
flyer.
yeah. Or just go around, like take a day to do business development by walking around the city, looking at businesses, like doing some recon and then finding their email,
I love that.
messaging them.
Yes.
Like that is also doable versus just feeling like you need to like find clients on LinkedIn. Like,
Yeah. I think that can be a trap.
yeah.
I definitely know people who, early on in their career or their freelance career or whatnot, like I have to be on LinkedIn. I have to create this persona or else I won't get work. But, is it really getting there? Is it leading to
Yeah.
work? Is it the kind of work you want? Is it distracting from like the actual work you want to do? So I think that's really probably important for a lot of folks to hear, that there is a way to show up and be genuine without it being like this brand thing. Because
Mhm.
you do show up, you do build community. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. I saw someone that you're connected to posted on LinkedIn, and it was a screenshot of the number of connections they had with you. And he
Yeah.
asked, "What's your Max Pete number?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is like the LinkedIn version of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. We all have a Max Pete number. We all
Yeah.
have
It's
someone in common." And so, but you've done that without it being a strategy. It's just, I don't know, it feels like community building is so ingrained in you. And I wonder if it's always been easy and if you do always, operate from this place of confidence.
yeah, I think it's because it's funny because I'm like, since the first question on this, I've been like reflecting on like my childhood and like, I think it's because I've never had a group. I think when you get into groups as a kid, and especially if you lived in the same area for a long time, you have this like group think of everyone starts to think the same. You fall into a passion of like sports or whatever, and you kind of have this like very similar way of expressing yourself and thinking, and that can like carry on from as a kid until an adult or whatever. And I think for myself, like I I never had that opportunity to have that because of just moving around. But I like every place I've been into, I've always wanted to just meet as many different types of people as I could. And so like I would hang out with when I did sports, I would hang out with like the guys that played sports. And then after that I would be like, I'm not really like into this crowd. Like it's not my whole thing. And then the same with music and the same with like alternative and like everything. Like I kind of like bounced around a lot. And I never held like a core group for so long. And I think I've like had good friends and all that sort of stuff, but I've always like kind of like bounced around. And I think it's just because I generally love meeting different types of people and like connecting with people. And I never felt like I had this like identity of this one thing. Um, and so I've loved being able to like meet others who were maybe in something that had an interest of mine or maybe something else. And yeah, like I just like, and I've just kind of without really thinking, just kind of done that throughout my life, of the core groups of people and stuff. And like, yeah, like I meet a lot of different people. I talk to a lot of different people. I feel like no matter like who you are, what you do, like there's always some sort of common thread between anyone for the most part. Like, yeah, it's not going to be like perfect, but like you can pretty much find some sort of common interest in anyone you meet. And yeah, I generally love like connecting, and I think that was always been like a big thing for me. Yeah, wow, this has turned into a cool reflection
I love it.
exercise.
I love it. And I feel like I at least like I know that kid. I know exactly that person, right? Who is just able to sort of like almost shapeshift and but not in a way of taking on identity, but just able to be like, I'm gonna show up with the sports guys and then I'll do the music and then,
Yeah,
maybe I don't know, the AV, whatever groups there were, right? And just being able to sort of like float between and yeah, find those commonalities. It really is it feels like and as you're reflecting on your childhood, it feels like the skill that you've carried that's brought you to like this career you have, which I think is very cool. It's sort of like, I don't know,
yeah, like
building
it's
community,
allowed me.
connecting other people. Like,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when I broke into the community space, it's always felt like something that was missing from what I've been doing in my career before that. Because I didn't know that this whole space existed, and so like it always felt like, oh, like this is that thing that like makes sense for me. Um, but it's also funny now too. Like like I'm 6 years into community, and like I've changed careers a few times already, and like it's always been around that 5, 6 year mark. And like I grew up with my mom who changed careers all the time too. Like she did so many different types of things. And I think when I grew up, I was like not a fan of that because we didn't have consistency or stability or any of those things. But it gave me a really early preview of like, oh, like you can kind of do different things. You don't have to like do one thing for the rest of your life. And so like I think I've always carried that with me too. And like yeah, I love community. I love this work. It's great. Like, it's still crazy to me that I get paid to do this stuff. But like, can I see myself doing this for the next 20, 30 years, whatever, till retirement? Like, no. Like,
Mhm.
I can't. Like, to be honest with you, like, there's just more out there that I want to try and do. And like, I don't. And I'm also like a big believer that just because you're like good at something doesn't mean you have to do it forever. And yeah, I know I just want to try new things. I want to like lean into something, maybe even familiar things like doing my own consulting practice again or like
Mhm.
whatever it might be. But I just know that like there's going to be a time limit on community work,
Yeah.
at least in the tech space, and I don't know exactly when that is. Um, but I know it's there.
Yeah. It's hard to not be in this day and age. I feel like there's so many people who are so tied to like their career as identity, right?
Hmm.
And you see it on LinkedIn and you see it with people who, are doing these things for 20, 30 years, et cetera. And I think like what I really love about what you just said and what I've heard you say is like, that community or, working in tech in this particular like job function is not forever. And you don't know what's next and you don't know when it'll end and you don't know how you'll kind of find the next thing, but that's not it. Um, and you have a lot of like, I don't know, admiration or respect or appreciation for what it's brought you so far. And I think that's such a
Hmm.
good balance that I don't often see. I think there's a lot of people like, oh, I've been doing this and I'm burnt out and I need something new, or no, this is the thing that I do and I'm good at it and it makes me money and that's the end all be all. And there is something really, yeah, refreshing about just being able to say, this has brought me this far. I really enjoyed this work. I love that I've fallen into it
Hmm.
and I will not be doing it until I retire.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
No.
like along for the ride and to figure out what is next and how I get there. But yeah, I think that's like, that feels like all we can ask for in this market, in this time we're in.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I just feel like we've been constantly, for the past 6 plus years, we've been constantly like been reminded that there is no stability in the stabilityness of what a 9 to 5 used to bring. Like that whole loyalty of staying at a company for that long, like just doesn't exist anymore. And I've seen it firsthand at other places I've worked at where like I've gone through a couple layoffs and like my friends who work there have been there for like 4 times as long as I have, and they still get the same treatment as someone like myself who's been there for like a year and a half or 2 years. And so it's just crazy. Um, and like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like since I've been able to try so many things in my career already that have been cool and it has led me from one place to the other, then I'm like, why wouldn't I try to continue to try that? Like, I don't want to just stop and retire at community work. I feel like this has been a great career, and I think I'll take elements from this of whatever I do next. But I don't think it's like the last stop on the train. I think that there's other stuff out there like that I want to do, and I feel like a lot of it has been pushing it more towards less of the tech hustle of like always being available, always like being on countless meetings and KPIs and or return on investment and all this stuff like and like more into like a slower life of like I show up to work, I do the thing, and I leave work. Like that to me is a big dream, and something I'm trying to like really like push for.
Yeah, that is the dream. That untetheredness. I was talking to someone
Yes,
yesterday and she's like, I'm offline for July. I was like, that's amazing. I love that. I
right.
love that you are just offline for an American. I feel like that's important to distinguish because I know in Europe they take months off, but like I don't, I'm offline for July. I'm like, good for you. I one day I will do that. Like that is
Hmm.
an aspirational goal of, yeah, there's a month over the summer where I will not be working. Ugh, one day.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
but I think to your point and like especially doing your own thing, like you can do that.
I know. Yeah,
I've never been great at like taking those breaks and all that sort of stuff, but like I think it's like with anything else, with deciding to take the leap of doing your own thing with posting, like whatever, it's honestly just doing it. It's like, all right, I'm putting a block in this time and like that is just what it's going to be. And I'm going to tell people about it and I'm going to like hold myself accountable for it. But it's not complicated. I think we inherently feel like, oh, if we're going to do this thing, it's going to be this complicated, like set of stuff that logistics and all this stuff. And like, really, like, it's not. It's just doing it and then saying you're doing it and not being sorry that you're doing it. Like, if a client's like, what do I need? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it. Or if like, and this is something that I'm saying as advice, but like, I'm, I've never been good at is like turning down work
mm,
because the scarcity mindset in me is like, you need to do this. You never know when another client's coming. Like, this is the opportunity. Versus the abundance mindset of like, and then knowing when you're taking off work, you're being like, okay, like, well, this isn't really for me now. Like, it's kind of getting in the way of like what I need to do. And knowing that like there will be something that comes along next, which always does happen. Um, and just like sitting in that uncomfortableness and not just taking a project or an opportunity or postponing your whatever you're trying to do because you're acting out of fear versus trust.
yeah. I think that is so, so huge. And I'm a big believer that we have the ability to sort of attract the type of work, people, environment, etc. And a lot of times our actions sort of help set that path. And I think that when you are operating from scarcity, it's almost like the doors are closed and there's no room for that really great thing to come in because
Exactly.
all these other little things are distracting, right? Whereas if you're like, that's not for me, that's not a fit, that opportunity is not what I want to be doing today, then you have space and the super abundant thing can come rushing in.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly. And it's
advice that
like,
I find hard to listen to as well.
yeah, it's super hard. It's easy to give. It's easy to like in theory. It's hard to practice because it's like you have bills, you have things you have to take care of. You have like something that's kind of like real tangible here that like isn't real tangible tomorrow. But at the same time, it's like I'm trying to remind myself that like these are like all like little tests. Like these are all like, okay, you're saying you're going to do something. Now the universe is testing you if you're going to actually do that thing. And if you're not, then like whatever, like it will just continue to fall down this thing. But if you are, then you just have to trust in this thing is going to work out, which it will work out. And like I don't know, I that's something I'm working on, and I need to, and like I'm proud of, my wife Celeste for practicing this too, because like she's putting more effort into her Flora business, where her like growing her like that business versus her freelancing, and like in between these two, she had an opportunity to like do this project for a freelance client that like she didn't really. It wasn't a project that like was gonna like that's something that she really wanted to do. Like it was just a complicated thing. It didn't make a ton of sense. Like, and so she turned it down. Um, and it was really cool to see that, because it's like, yes, like anyone can use more money and all this stuff. But like, then again, to your point, like then you're just taking up space that could be filled with something better. And I think we need to remember that too, is like we, you just have to like trust in the universe a bit, and like the things that stuff will align, which they have aligned. Like we have evidence, even though it sounds woo woo and like all this sort of stuff, but like we have evidence of this working out, right? Like we're here today because of things working out in the past. And so I think like we just need to like trust in that a little bit more than and not act out of fear. I think fear drives a lot of everyone's decisions, and it never leads to a good place.
Yeah, I went through that with being laid off in the summer, putting it out there, but not allowing myself to stand firm in the fact that I did want to pursue a self-employed path, and then taking a contract, letting it go full time. And like the minute that happened, I was like, oh, that's not the most aligned choice. And that did feel like a big test that I don't want to say I failed, but I got to the right answer eventually. Just took the experience here, and maybe I needed to go through that. I think a lot of people maybe need to go through that, but no, I think that's such a powerful just example of following through. And I think at the core, we all know what's right and what's wrong, like what's aligned for us and what's not. And I think it is a muscle that you have to flex, like listening to your intuition and your gut and whatever you call it. But yeah, the more you can sort of practice listening to those things and saying no to the things that don't sound great and say yes to the things that light you up.
Yeah,
So important.
exactly. And like, and yeah, like I felt that a lot with my last job that I was at, which like I'm super grateful for. It filled the gap that it needed to. The people I worked with were awesome. Like like I learned a lot, but I think that I had so many red flags from like day one that I was like, oh, this like isn't it. But I forced it. I forced it in every way possible, because I just acted out of scarcity, because I was just like, oh, we were moving across country. I just bought a house. Like there's all these things that I was just like, I can't have another thing be so uncertain right now, that I forced this thing to work, and it worked for a bit, but then I got to a point where I was just like, this isn't working anymore. And yeah, I think you will have a lot of these red flags and these notices, and it will eventually get to a point where it's like it will come to an end of being like, okay, this, you can't keep doing this thing. And to your point, if you like getting this full-time offer and then being like, oh, like actually, like I don't want this thing, and then now you're like doing your own business and building that up, and I feel like you've posted about like grappling with the fact that like so many people are out of work and the market's whatever. But I think that's just like one side of the story. I think we're fed the negative, we're fed all this stuff. But like I think also too, like there's so much opportunity out there. There's still businesses being made every single day. There's still money being spent every single day. And so and like honestly too, like building your own thing with having different ways to earn revenue and everything is way more uh what's the word I'm looking for? Sustainable than working a 9 to 5 where it's just like you can get let go anytime, and like if that's your main source of income, that dries up and like nothing's promised. And so
And you and
yeah,
I
I
both know
think
that
that
firsthand.
yeah, exactly. And so I think um yeah, I just think that like that is something, to always like remember too, is like, yeah, it's uncertain. It's you're going from something that like is a little bit more predictable to something that's not predictable, but like that's a short term play versus the long term gain of it. And so I think sometimes it's just like pulling yourself out of that like day to day mindset versus being like, okay, like in a year from now, like all this stuff makes a lot more sense than it would have if I just stayed at like suffering and powering through. And I think like just like yeah, like life is way too short powering through. I lost my mom at like when I was 25 and it was very sudden. And that forced me to stop my career in music to like then launch my own thing because I was like at that point I was like, whatever, I really don't care.
Yeah.
And but I think it was also a reminder that it's like, I don't know, life is way too short to suffer through for so long to then feel like, oh, I can retire and do what I want. But at that age, you don't even know if you're going to be alive, or because my mom died when she was 61, so she
Oh,
died even
yeah.
before she
That's
like
young.
would retire.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the point of like suffering through life to have a cushiony retirement that you can't even have because you're not around to have it? So it's like, yeah, I think that uh, it's important to take risks and try things. And like at the end of the day, you can try to build a business for a year, and if it doesn't work out, you can go back to a 9 to 5.
9 to 5, they'll always be there.
It'll always be there. Like
They'll
jobs will
always
be
be
there,
there.
or you can
Yeah.
supplement stuff with like when I first ran my own freelance business. For the first like 6 months, maybe close to a year, I worked at a salad bar from 7 in the
Love that.
morning to 1 p.m. I was like a prep person, and it got me out of the house. I was doing something completely different. I had some sort of consistent income because I was like, okay, like, yeah, it's not a ton of money and like I can't really like live on this, but like it it fills the leaky bucket. And then I would go home, change and freelance for a few hours. And so like it took some of that pressure off. And I feel like when people are feeling like they want to like start their own business or do this, they feel like they have to build everything from the ground up from day one. And it's just like, that's not the case. Like you can find part-time work. You can do things like fractional contracts or things like that for like a little bit of time to like build your reserves up. Um, and so, yeah, I guess the overall theme of this conversation is there's so much nuance into everything,
Yes.
and there's never one way of doing something.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And my husband always says, he's like, before I go back to full-time work, I'd rather take a job at the Popeyes on the corner. I'm like, yeah, why not? The one thing that you do really well, and I feel like you just did it in that last sort of spiel, like you are such a realist. And, you've said this before, like you don't just talk about the good and the wins and whatnot, but you're also so positive at the same time. Like even when you're talking about hard things, you have this way of, I don't know, and maybe it's just that that everything is going to work out or that you're on the right path. And that just feels so um it's hard to do that a lot of the time because I think we think of positivity and it has this bad rap of being like toxically positive, but
Hmm.
there's this balance of like I feel like the first time you and I met, we were talking about the weather. I'm like, it's so cold. You're like, it's so cold and it's awful. And spring is in 2 months. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Spring
Yeah.
is in 2 months. It's like, the and instead of the or. Um, so that feels, it's just important. I love carrying that with me. And I think you do such a good job of sharing that message.
No, thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think like it's important to have some optimism. Like I don't want to be a toxic positivity type of guy and be like, oh, like all you have to do is manifest and it's just gonna work out. Like, no, I think you have to like put in work and like create those opportunities and do the things. But like I think you generally have to like remind yourself that like if you're doing these things, like something is gonna come out of it. Like you don't know when, you don't know what, but something is going to come out of it. And also too, like I was at a Creative Mornings talk that was like a couple months ago. one of the guest speakers here. He's an awesome guy. His name is Rob Lawless. He has this like whole mission of meeting 10,000 people. But the thing that he said during his talk of like him starting his own business was like, he was like, the end is never the end. And I think that is so awesome and like profound, because it's like the worst case scenario of like starting your business or doing your thing or whatever it is like, okay, like I'm gonna run out of money. Okay, well then what? Like, okay, well then, like my sister's a 20-minute walk from us. Like we could live with her, or her parents are 20-minute drive. We could live with them. Like if everything just you know went away, all our money, everything, the house, like yes, all that stuff would be absolutely terrible. But we have support in our lives to like have that. And I feel like we always go to the worst case scenario, but when we actually think about the worst case scenario, it's like, oh, like we can actually figure that part out. And if you can figure that part out, then you can figure your business out. And so
Yeah.
like the end is never the end of that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I am a big fan of just mapping out your rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then what, and then what, and then what, and it's like, okay, yeah, like, you're living with family, you're working at the Popeyes, and in the grand scheme of things, like, still pretty good, right? Like, you have support, you have community. I want to end with one last question to anyone who's listening to this who might feel like inspired, or like, God, how does he do that? Or even like, I feel like a lot of times we see people and we get this like envious feeling of, I want to do all that. Like, what would you say to that person who's sitting here and like,
Ugh.
Max, he's so positive and confident and real?
I would say to go back to my point of like, even though I am who I am and like I share what I share and I do all these things, like I still don't have those perfect days. I still feel very envious of others at certain points. I still compare myself to others on their journey. I still have all that baggage with me. And so I would say uh like it's normal to have that. It's that part I don't think is ever going to go away completely, and I don't think it like ever should go away completely. But I think like it's just normal to feel those things. I also think like for me, whenever I'm feeling sort of like that, or wanting to do something else, it's taking like little bits of action of like, okay, well, what is it that I need to do to this? And it doesn't necessarily mean to be like, I need to have a business plan. I need to reach out to this client. And it's like, no, maybe just like, let me journal or talk about this thing to someone else, or like use an app, or like whatever that thing is, or go outside to walk, or lift some weights, or whatever it is. I think it's like action like really helps with anxiety, helps with feeling overwhelmed, helps with feeling comparison, and like really like talking about that stuff versus like bottling it in. Like whenever I feel those feelings, which happens, I always have a conversation with Celeste or my family or my friends, and I just like talk about it, because I'm like, I don't want to bottle that shit in. And every time I talk about it, I feel, even though there's nothing that's been solved, I feel better because I let it out. And I think we should do more of that. And so I would just say that. And also too, like, I don't know, people ask me like, how do you like post and do all this stuff and get engagement and do all this stuff online? I'm like, I've been doing it for 10 plus years. And there's good days and bad days, and good stuff that happens and bad. So I don't know. It's just consistency and trying things. And there's no magic to anything.
No.
Trust me. I wish there was, because I would do it, but there isn't. I would just say like figure out what works for you, and just keep trying it. And one day it will click, or one day it won't, and you'll lead to somewhere else.
Love it. Max, thank you so much for joining. Will you
Yeah,
let
thank you.
everyone know where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So Max Pete,
Get your Max Pete
Substack.
number.
Yes, yes, yes. Tell me your Max Pete number. My Substack is just maxpete.substack.com. That's where I'm primarily at. I love that place. Yeah, and yeah, other than that, just like, yeah, send me a message, say hello, let me know how I can, support you in your journey.
Thank you, Max.
Have a good one.
Thank you again, Max, and thank you all for listening. That's a wrap on the first interview for the Be Cringe podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed having the conversation. I could have talked to Max for another hour. And if you feel the same way, go and find him. He's on LinkedIn, he's on Substack. All of that will be in the show notes. Go find your Max Pete number. And yes, let us know what you thought. I've got a bunch of other interviews lined up. I'm so excited. I've been having really great conversations with people. So if you have any interest in doing this, I will leave a link to a Google form in the show notes. If you've ever dreamt of being on a podcast, but maybe it felt too cringe, maybe now's the time. So go ahead, fill that out. You can find me at thismightbecringe.com. Until the next one, thank you all.